With we yes, and we're just going live now. Yay! Yeah, we are live.
Okay. We get to get real.
Get to get real.
Yeah.
So Soul Sister Get Real, Eleni from Australia and Caryn from the States.
Yeah. Yes. And we had a conversation about last time, and we got to be authentic. We get to talk about real life stuff, right? Real life spiritual stuff.
Yeah. We created this series because we've been having really good, awesome, amazing Soul Sister chats, just the two of us privately. And we thought, why not share it? Why not share what we're actually learning in our life? Because both of us have gone through huge spurts of growth. And let's share it with everybody else.
Right. Right. So here's an interesting thing, and I would love to know from you, Eleni. What I've recognized is that when I opened up spiritually after Josh died, it was almost like I was 50 years old. I don't know how I didn't know the spiritual world existed. I was religious, right? Like God and Jesus carried me through Josh dying in the divorce. I could never have done it. I sat there and begged them to carry me. And it was like I was clueless, ignorant. Like I don't like there was lenses on where I could only see the piece of my world that I knew. And I had no idea what was out there. And it fascinates me. All of the stuff on YouTube and all of the stuff that's like everywhere, right? There's books, there's YouTubes, there's people out there channeling, there's guides, there's angels. How do we not see these things until some trauma or tragic thing? And some people do, I guess, since they were young, but it just fascinates me how I was like in this tunnel with these blinders on. I had no idea it existed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that that we all go through life with a level of awareness that just keeps getting bigger. And for some of us, for this journey, our level of awareness stays the same. But what I feel is true, well, that's not really true, because some people, they go slower, but their level of awareness still expands. And it might take them a whole lifetime for their level of awareness to increase this much. For other people, their level of awareness just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But whatever is the case is right for you. But I don't believe that that's true, what you just said. I don't believe that you were ignorant, because I knew you before Josh passed, and you did have faith. And you did have trust. And I know you said that you did have faith and you did have trust, but it expanded after his passing. But you still had awareness before then.
Yeah, I did have faith and I did have trust. And I believe like God and I mean, he was always my rock. I have a sign above my bed that says, give it to God and go to sleep. And that had been up there for years before Josh passed away. And yet there's so much I did not tap into. There's so much I was not aware of. And it's a learning, like for me, it's a journey, a definite journey as you start out as this baby and you start to open your eyes to this, like, wow, where did my son go? And how, like, where is he and how can I still have a relationship with him? And then you start to open up to all of this, and then you see other people that are in the space that I was in, and I get it. Like, I get it. It's like they just aren't aware of it. And I know you either, because we used to go to these conferences and we'd have that metaphysical track, and they were upstairs. And I remember thinking many times over, I'm not that kind of hypnotist.
No.
I am a business person. I'll do the business track and the clinical track. I am not interested in that woo-woo connect with angel stuff. And now that's my world.
Exactly. I was not someone who collected sprays. This is my heart chakra spray and my crystals. And I was not a woo-woo, even though I was a hypnotherapist. I wasn't doing woo-woo. But but the signs kept coming regardless. And I knew that there was something more. Like even at that stage when I was presenting in Heartland in Missouri at our conference, like the reason I even got there, I knew was divine intervention with the way that it all happened. So these big events happen that remind us that there is something more. And until we have until we're in that part of our life to really wake up to more, we're not quite ready yet. So I think that it's because this is the divine timing for us, and our awareness still is going to increase as time goes on. So this isn't just it. We don't have all the awareness yet, but it's just awareness. It's levels of awareness, and our awareness just keeps growing and growing and growing exponentially now because we're hungry for it. So me and you, we're hungry for it. So we devour everything about the spirit world because our eyes have opened to what's out there, but we still don't know what's out there.
And that's a really interesting point, because I know when people become new Christians and they accept God or Jesus into their heart, they are all about, like, they're devouring the Bible and all that. And it's very similar as I want to know more. I want to know more. I'm curious for you, when your father died, I feel like is when you started to really open up and connect and, really take a close look at your values, your mission, your purpose. How did that happen? Like, tell me a little bit about that process or that journey.
I think that it felt like for me there was a defining moment during the last couple of weeks of his life when he was in hospital. So my dad was really healthy up to the point where he went in hospital. He was really good, like completely independent, really strong. Even though he was 91, he would mow the neighbors' lawns. He was that person. He was a very capable man. And on the 3rd of March 2021, he went into hospital and he didn't come out. He passed away the 1st of May. So it was a really short time period in terms of when it was time for him to go. And
okay, can I just stop you just for a second? Because I have to say this. We are so connected. That soul sister thing, that is Josh's birthday, the 3rd of March.
Wow.
That's so crazy.
Yeah,
okay.
Synchronicity everywhere, right? Absolutely.
Everywhere. Okay,
Everywhere.
sorry for interrupting, but I had to tell you that. Okay.
March 2021 is when he went into hospital. I'll never forget that day. And there was a time that I went to visit him. So in his last few weeks, I actually stayed with him and slept there every day. But when he first got into hospital, I was visiting him, and it's at this point that things started to really rapidly decline for him really quickly. And he was by himself in the hospital room. And my dad he was a very proud man. Like, he would be immaculately dressed with his suit. Like, he was always wearing a suit. He was always wearing a tie. He would reapply aftershave through the day. He always smelled amazing. He always looked good. He had his hat, his suit. He was always well-dressed, well-spoken. He took pride in his appearance and who he was. And I walked into the hospital room and he was sitting on the bed. There was nobody else there. And he didn't know I had arrived, and he had no clothes on. He just had like a nappy on. And he had never had any kind of incontinence issues or anything like that. And he was sitting on his bed like this, and he was going like that. He was just looking at himself, shaking his head, and it almost like, where am I now? Like, what's left? That's what felt like for me, that it was this kind of just, I saw him as I walked in. He didn't know that I was watching him, but I felt such dismay that this is what was left. And I could feel just the sadness that he couldn't do anything. And you never saw him without a shirt on. Like, he would have his singlet and then a shirt and then a tie. You never saw him like that. And it was like this big realization for me, like, this is what's going to be left. This is what's going to be left. Like, this is the end. At the end, you don't take your clothes with you. You don't take anything with you. You don't take your image with you. You don't take your identity with you. You don't take anything with you. And that's what he was looking at. It was like, I've got nothing. And yet he had everything, because he had cultivated such incredible relationships during his life. And so that's when it was like, what really matters? What really matters? At the end, you're not going to go with that suit. You're not going to go with the tie. You're not going to go with anything. You're not going to take anything with you. But
even your people. Even your people.
Yeah. And so when how much he was loved was the most important thing. And he loved so much, like, he loved people so much. He had such beautiful relationships. And for me, that was this huge awakening. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. What are we striving for? What am I stressed about? What am I worried about? How many courses I'm selling, or how many students I've got, or why am I worried about things that don't matter? They don't matter. They don't matter. Nothing matters as much as you love. That's as relationships, like, how much you give of yourself to other people is the only thing that matters.
And then how did that transition you into wanting to know more about that spiritual world, or the spiritual world? Or
because I guess I wanted to find out more about where Dad was heading off to. I was already interested before that happened, but my interest was getting more and more and more as to what happens now for him. So what's the process he's going to go through? And that's why I poured over books and books and books and books about, like, what happens.
Yeah. So interesting. Let me think. February of 2021. That was before your dad passed away. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So you must have been into it before that. And the reason I say that is because Josh had passed away in May of 2020. And I was upstairs painting the woodwork. I was going through the divorce, and I wanted to update my house, and I had winter evenings by myself. My boys were in college, the other two. And so I was upstairs, and I thought, instead of paying someone, I'm just going to paint the woodwork for a couple hours every night. It'll give me something to do. And I remember you and I had a conversation, and you were talking to me about what is the woman on YouTube that you used to follow all the time, and you did some mentoring with? Super spiritual. She has channels
Lori Ladd?
Yes, thank you. You had mentioned Lori Ladd, and you said you're totally into her. You've been learning all kinds of stuff from her. And I just remember hearing her name. Well, I was upstairs painting, and I was still figuring things out. I still was in the middle of, like, the divorce wasn't final yet. I think we were going to mediation and super stressed about things. And I was painting the woodwork, and I started getting really, really dizzy. And I thought, what is wrong with me? And so I thought, well, maybe I have low blood sugar. I went downstairs, I ate, I came back up, I was painting, and I still felt like I was going to pass out. And I thought, well, this isn't cool. I'm here alone. I don't know what the heck is wrong with me. And so I stopped that day. And the next day I went to do it again, and it was the same thing. I was like, what is going on? I just ate dinner. I'm not tired. I mean, I'm fine. And then I remembered in my head, oh yeah, Eleni had mentioned this Lori Ladd and I'm like, I'm going to listen to her while I'm painting, just to keep me occupied and give me something to think about. I always like to have podcasts or something on as I'm doing these things. And she started talking about how there was this energy, and it wasn't for everybody, but her guides had told her that some people needed to hear this. And it was because there was all this massive energy coming in, and some of us needed to ground ourselves. And we were not feeling grounded. These are the symptoms: lightheaded, nauseousness, all of these things. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not grounded with everything I'm going through. Like, and I didn't know what, like, grounded meant. I was like, okay, this is crazy, because I was just starting to get into all this. So I did her exercise, and it was literally like sitting on the ground, Indian style. imagining the roots, ground yourself into the earth. And I'll tell you, I put my paintbrush down. I was like, I am willing to try it. I tried it and I was like, fine. I could get up. I painted a few more hours. I practiced it and I still practice it to this day. And yet it was so interesting to me, these things like I had never heard of, never thought about as I'm just starting to get into this whole, like, what is spirit? What is universe? What is channeling? Like, what are guides? All those things. But you, again, it must have been before you did start with Lori Ladd as you were starting to open up to it.
It's been a process. It's been over the years. It's just getting more and more and more and more and more, because so many events happened to me that were pure synchronicity. Like, so many events happened to me that were synchronicity, that I started to understand that I was not alone, and that it's not just what we were taught traditionally in our religion, that there is more to it than that. That apart from the main people that we know about in our religion, there's actually a family of light that we all have, and how that works. And I was progressively learning more and more and more, and feeling it and knowing, because there's too many things that happened in my life that I did not orchestrate. And when I think about my whole life and the big events, like the things that really took me to the next level, they were all orchestrated by the universe. They were not orchestrated by me. And so I knew, but as I began to move through life, it was just about, what am I interested in now? And what am I interested in now? And that it just kept growing and growing and growing from that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And I've thought about this a few times. Josh had said to me, he was a risk taker. He had said to me, and I can see where he was when he said it, twice on Mother's Day, which was May 5th or 6th. And then he passed away like 2 weeks later. And then once shortly prior to that, he said to me, "Don't worry, Mom, I'm invincible." And it was the craziest thing. He was like on the ladder tacking something down for me, because on Mother's Day, I asked from the boys, "Don't give me a gift. I just want help around the house in the yard because it's springtime." And so I think he was tacking down a cable, and he was up on the ladder and he's being kind of silly. And I was like, "Be careful. Like, this makes me nervous." And I remember him saying, "Don't worry, Mom. I do this stuff all the time. I'm invincible." And then that same day, he was on the roof and he was snapping branches off because they were like over the top of the roof. And he said, "I'm a silverback gorilla. I am invincible." And I was like, "You're on the roof. Be careful." And then one other time he said it. And after he passed away, I have been told by quite a few sources, like spiritual or channeling, or that he was definitely intuitive and he knew, like, obviously our souls knew, but he knew that he was invincible. And I was like, how is that? And then what I realized is we are all invincible. We're just on the other side, right? Like, just because our bodies aren't here, we are invincible. And for him to say that to me 3 times, like just shortly before he got in a motorcycle accident and died, like, to me, that it's so interesting when you put all of those pieces together, isn't it? And you really start opening up to it. So yeah.
Full body shivers when you said the word invincible, and how he said that to you, because his higher self knew. So his higher self knew, and they would have been the words that came into his mind to say. So it was almost, and knowing that later on you would connect the dots. And that's the incredible thing about whatever we go through, is that we connect the dots later on. So things happen now, and then later on we discover it was this, when we stop and look, it was this magical, incredible web that is so perfect. And that's what makes it funny, that we think we can control things, because the web is so magical and so incredible and so beyond us, that we can't control things. That's the problem, is that we try and control things. We try and control outcomes, when we've got to just allow life to be.
Back to that surrender, trust, and allow.
Exactly. But that invincible word, that's the number one when it comes down to it. when it comes down to our fears, what is the ultimate fear? What is it?
Well, for most people, death,
Yes.
but not mine. I can honestly say since Josh died,
Yeah.
I know I have a lot to do right now, and I would feel really bad leaving my boys behind. I know they'd be okay. And I know I have a massive mission yet. And yet, it's funny you say that. I was thinking about that today. I was walking the dog. I don't know why it came to my mind. And I thought to myself, if I just like my body just decided not to be here anymore, that's cool with me. Like, that is so cool with me. And then my next thought, you're going to laugh at this. My next thought was, and I didn't write the book yet, and I didn't open up, and I didn't help the world find like love and spirituality and all those things that we're supposed to do. So I'm going to have to do this again. And I was like, oh, wait, maybe I'm not yet because I get to do this mission. I don't know that I want to do this again.
Yeah,
so
like
funny
who wants to go to school again?
That was my thoughts.
Exactly. It's funny you say that because I have that thought all the time, about like, is it cool? And I'm like, yeah, of course it's cool. But for most people, it's not cool. And even though we say that, it's okay if this happens and this is what it's our time to go, there still would be a part of us that would fall back into ego at some point and go, oh no, I'm a bit scared actually. But what we're saying is that we're sort of playing with the concept that, you know what, we're okay not to be here if it's our time to go. But with most people, that's their ultimate fear. And when you operate from that fear point of, well, I'm not going to have enough food and therefore I can't do this, therefore I can't do that. And what would happen? Well, what's the ultimate fear? Ultimate fear is death. And the way that we treat death in our society is just in itself a big fear paradigm. But I've got to tell you something I've just heard on death recently, which is really fascinating. So I was listening to, do you know Matthias De Stefano? Oh, he's incredible. So he's actually someone who not only he was given the gift of remembering everything, not through past life regression or anything like that, but he actually knows the details of every single lifetime. So he remembers everything as you're talking. He doesn't go into trance or anything like that.
What's his name?
Matthias De Stefano. And what he was telling me about, not telling me, what he was saying in his podcast about, the Atlantis civilization, when what he remembers is that from the moment the child is born, they teach the child that congratulations, you're getting closer to death now. So death is the aim, like death is the gift, because then you're going to go back home, because they were all aware of the greater existence and they were all aware of how it all works. So every day that passed, it's like, oh, one day closer to death.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's
and a different perspective. You see life differently that way, don't you? As opposed to I'm one day closer to death. Oh no, I'm getting older.
Yeah, as opposed to that's not to say this is grim and oh, we don't want to be here. That the fact is that for me, I am so grateful for being here. Like I live in this space of gratitude, because how lucky are we to be able to feel the grass under our feet and
yes.
smell the
And
air.
I think that sometimes when I'm connecting with Josh, like I'm taking a walk and I'm connecting with him, I feel him saying to me or giving me that message, like, oh, you're so lucky. You get to see so-and-so, you get to taste, because he loved fettuccine Alfredo. I hear him giving me like the messages, like, if I could only feel that cold, freezing cold air on my face again, Mom. So we do know that, right? Is we get to appreciate the human experience because we feel, we taste, we love, and yes, we feel pain, but we feel pleasure, and we get to embrace all of that. And like you, I get in that space, like I'm so lucky I get to feel all of this and experience it.
Oh, Absolutely. And, it's when you're living in this place of gratitude all the time, it's just, this is when you see beauty in everything. Like everything becomes more vibrant. I don't know about you, Caryn, but when I look at the trees outside, my balcony, it just looks like a picture storybook. Like the trees just look so vibrant and so green. When you're really looking and feeling your environment, everything is so strong in color. Do you find that?
Yes, yes. And you like see the twinkle of the leaves and the vibrant green color, and yes, and I did not appreciate that for so many years of my life. And when you really open up to it, it's all so magical.
It's also magical. And now, like, I talk to my trees, like the trees that are outside. It's glorious. It's like, oh, hi, beautiful. I missed you. How are you today? It sounds like I'm a crackpot, but I never used to do that before. But it's like there's a consciousness in there. There's consciousness everywhere. There's
It's
energy
so
everywhere.
it's so funny you say that, because in the wintertime I can walk on the golf course across the street, and we got like 10 inches of snow the other day. So I was taking the dog out for a walk, and every now and then on the golf course, I'll hug a tree. And it feels so beautiful for me. I love hugging trees. It feels grounded. They're so majestic. Like I feel like I'm connecting to the earth, and I don't know, it gives me this peace to hug a tree. And every now and then, and they're really big trees, I'll hug a tree and I'll kind of look around, because I'm
Yeah,
like, what are people thinking about me? I'm a tree hugger, right? But it feels so good.
I
It's like I
know.
want to.
It does. The other day, there was a person who went and hugged, I call it my tree because it's right outside my place, this big giant tree, but of course it's not mine, it's on the beach. And there was a man who, he was actually doing a prayer in front of the tree. And then at the end of it, he was like, tried to hug it. And it was like, I was like, oh, I'm so glad that somebody else is giving my tree love. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. Whereas in the past, I would have gone, uh,
Well, that's what I think of. Like, if anybody, because we live in a small town, if anybody like sees me hugging this tree, I can just imagine.
yeah, I know what you mean. But this is where it's at, right? It's about, because I know what you mean, because I've hugged trees and wondered who's watching, is to hug trees and want people to see that, because then maybe they're going to think about it too, or maybe
Right.
just have complete disregard about anything else except you and the tree.
Right. Right. Truth. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. So back to your journey. After your father passed away, I know you had a few experiences with him. Do you ever feel like, I feel like this sometimes, I get so busy in my world that a week will go by and I'll be like, oh gosh, I didn't even open up to Josh's signs or what he might be wanting to tell me. And then I'm like, oh man, like I miss him. I really miss him when I don't do that. Do you find that?
Yeah, I find that too, that I really miss him too. But I'm also conscious of, this might sound strange, but being needy. You know what I mean? Being needy, being codependent, almost like calling him too much. Like I know he's got
Mm,
to do his own stuff over there. And I know that he's available every time I call him, he's there, but he's got his own
mm,
process to go through.
mm.
And so that's the latest thought process that's coming to me, because I used to call him a lot
Ah,
and speak to him a lot and cry a lot. And then I thought, wow, let him go. Like, let him
mm,
go. Let him go to do what he needs to do with his soul, rather than him, being all
yeah,
over us. And so,
at you. Mhm.
yeah. So
So,
now I'm not as much, because of that
mhm,
thought that's coming to my mind,
yeah.
which is, call him
Mhm,
to send love to him or whatever, but not to need him, to release the
mhm,
need for him.
interesting. We had the conversation about me putting Josh's ashes in the Nile, and the message I got about how he doesn't need to protect me anymore and he wants to dance with the gods, the Egyptian gods. That was a big eye-opening awakening for me too, because when someone that was there, it was spiritual, said to me, are you ready to let him go dance with the gods? We're in Egypt. Like, are you ready to let him go? I immediately got crazy emotional. Like, I felt the tears coming, and my visceral reaction was, no, I'm not. Like, he's mine. And I know he hasn't been here for 2 years, but he's mine. And then I got to move through that when I was in Egypt, because it's so spiritual there, right? When I released his ashes in the Nile, it's so emotional for me, because it was a ritual. It was like I was literally letting him go to go dance with the gods.
That's so
And,
beautiful.
same with you, is I recognize that he gets to go do whatever he's supposed to do up there. And it's not about, he doesn't need to take care of me. Like, I'm okay here.
Yeah,
So
that
yeah.
exactly. That's just so beautiful about dancing with the gods. And something else interesting that Matthias de Stefano said was that the best thing we can do for someone's soul is actually not say, I love you, I miss you, I miss you. It's just like sending you the blessings to do whatever you need to do, to go and be with, to just do the journey, like sending you all the blessings in the world to do you now. So sending them off and giving them that blessing to do that. So
Yeah, I love
rather
it.
than hanging on to them.
Yeah, interesting. Something else came up for me when I was taking that walk, and I was thinking about what would happen if I like died today, or, I slipped on the ice or whatever. And something else that came up to me, the craziest things, right? Like, we come up with them, and I feel like they are like downloads from our higher self. I was thinking I could be up there with Josh, and we could be like connecting with the boys, my other sons, his brothers, and we could be doing all kinds of really fun stuff together, like we could be giving this message, and we can be orchestrating that. And so that was coming up for me too, which is so funny. And I didn't even realize I was having those thoughts till I was just thinking about them, about how we could be up on the other side of the veil, like orchestrating and doing stuff up there. So interesting.
Yeah, you're funny, because I have the same thoughts. All the thoughts you have, I have those thoughts too. Like, when you really start looking at everything from a multidimensional perspective, it's just like all these considerations come into your mind. But at the end of the day, we're living this magical human experience, and this is exactly where we need to be right now, to be feeling it all and living it all and sharing it all. And that's why we're doing this series, is just to share the things that people don't usually talk about, and really from a perspective that's really practical. That this is just our experience as we're growing, as we're evolving, as we're awakening to everything that is. And the more we're open, the more comes appears to us. It's just really beautiful and magical.
Yeah, it really is. It is so amazing when I think about all the coincidences, and how you have been instrumental in my life. And we knew years ago, I knew years ago, that we got to do something together, and how we just have this synchronicity, and it keeps pulling us in the same direction.
Yeah. And the thing is, and this is the beautiful part, is that, my 3D self or ego self years ago would have probably sat down with you in a meeting and tried to organize it and tried to plan it, and it would become really hard. But we're just going with the flow and just see what happens.
Yeah.
That's it. We just go with the flow and see what happens. We don't have to know where we will be in 5 years' time.
Right.
That's why I laugh at those 10-year plans that they used to do, and people still do. It's like, let it go. Let go of the 10-year plan and just live in the present moment. We don't have to know. We just know that this feels good. This is fun. I love catching up with you. We don't know where that's going to take us next. We're just going to follow the trail, like the energy trail.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know. It's really exciting when you let God and divine and spirit lead you to see what the plans are for your life. Because it's not, that was part of what was so hard for me, even with the divorce, is part of the letting go of, it's supposed to be like this. Like, that was my whole life. I had it all planned out. I had retirement planned out, and where we're going to live and what we're going to do with our grandchildren, and then letting that go and that surrender of there is a plan and I just get to move through it
Yeah.
with joy and gratitude. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you really have that trust, everything becomes easier because
Yeah.
you don't have to orchestrate anything.
Right. Right.
Because it's all orchestrated. And that doesn't mean you don't do anything, but it means that you connect in with the feelings and just follow the energy, follow the energy, follow the energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I even realize that in my business when I'm just like, whatever, like it's going to happen. Just keep moving through the motions. It just happens. The money comes in, the money flows. The people come to you, like they find you. It's easy. It gets to be easy. And yet, I still get into resistance and scarcity and all that stuff that we get ourselves into. And then I have to do a little reality check. Like, it's not serving you, Caryn. Look at what's going on in your life. What gets to be opened back up?
Yeah, but the difference now is when you get into scarcity is that you see yourself getting into scarcity.
Right.
And that is the power there. So rather than being in scarcity and believing that this is all there is and really not even seeing yourself in scarcity, when we have a thought that is scarcity, like for me, it hits me in the head. Like it's so obvious. It doesn't mean I don't have it. It just means that now I see it. And when I see it, it's going to dissolve. It's only when you don't see it that it has a grip over you. But we see our scarcity thoughts now. So that's the first thing, is to see your scarcity thoughts, like acknowledge, what was that thought about? That I believe that I don't have enough, that I believe I'm not going to get enough, that I believe that I need to do something to have enough. So in a really non-judgmental way, just being an observer of all the things that go through our minds, and that gives us so much power when we do that.
Yeah. That reminds me of this. I love this. My friend gave me to this a few years ago, and it says, sometimes on dark days, I think nobody cares and nobody is coming. Then I remember who sends those thoughts like that, and I straighten my crown.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that the cutest thing ever?
That
It
is.
reminds me, like, straighten your crown, Caryn.
Yeah.
Caryn.
Straighten your crown. Understand that you are divine, that you are just as divine as anybody else, and we're all the same, and there's nothing to be afraid of when we just be. We're the ones who put our blocks in front of us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yay. All right. Well, that was a really great conversation. It just happens.
Exactly. Like just flow, just whatever was top of mind. And that's what these series are all about. Soul Sisters Getting Real, which is the conversation that we would have offline anyway, which is all about the world that we live in and that we think we live in. And, you know, we could call this the illusion and the other world reality. But the fact is we're still feeling all the human experiences in this illusion.
Sure.
So having the best time whilst we're here. Just having the best time whilst we're here.
Right. And you know what? The human experience isn't always easy. I mean, there are pieces where like, holy cow, this is like a lot of work down here. But, you know, I wanted to mention before we hop off that if anyone wants to comment below or get in touch with us and has questions for us, something that maybe we can address or talk about in our own experiences, whether, you know, your relationship with your dad and losing him, or Josh, and how that, you know, how that helped our spiritual journey or what our spiritual journey looks like, comment. We'd love to talk about it.
We'd love to talk about it. So, yeah. Tell us what you want to know and we'll talk about it.
Right. And not that we know everything, but we can tell you our experience in it, right?
That's right. Yeah. And another perspective. And it's good to know as many perspectives as possible, because there are so many perspectives.
Yeah. You know what I'd like to talk about sometime, maybe we can do this next time, is how there are people that think there's such a difference between religion, Christianity, and spirituality, and how really in reality, it's the same thing. And how do we merge those two and realize that we can have our own opinions on it, yet it's really the same thing. It's not one is good and one is bad and that they're different. So maybe we'll talk about that in the future.
Let's do that. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you for that conversation, my soul sister. And yay, until next time.
All right. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.